After a rare day off, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki at it again. This time she was asked if President Biden watched the interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, and she gave this answer instead in today's Psaki Dodge.
Well, let me first say that obviously many of us caught the interview. I don't have as many Americans did, and many people around the world. Meghan Markle is a private citizen, and so is Harry at this point. And let me just reiterate that we have a strong and abiding relationship with the British people, and a special partnership with the government of the United Kingdom on a range of issues, and that will continue.
I just don't. I don't even get it. Why not just say no?
He didn't watch it.
He has no interest. He didn't watch it. He was up watching the Muppets or whatever, all right? He did not watch the interview. I want to welcome in our panel this morning, we've got our White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson, down in Washington. Former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCoy, is here. Former Trump staff advisor and Newsmax contributor, Andrew Giuliani, making his first appearance on Wake Up America. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And our constitutional attorney, Amir Benno. Amir, we'll start with you. This just literally, she's talking about our special relationship with Great Britain, about a foolish interview that Oprah did with a couple of her neighbors in California. Why not just say no and move on?
I don't know. I can't explain why Jen Psaki says the things that she says. I think, look, the fact of the matter is I find the royals to be less than interesting. I imagine that many Americans feel similarly, although I'm sure probably were captivated by this. But nevertheless, let's turn to the real issues. And to pivot just a little bit, I want to get back to something we were talking about before, which was about Governor Cuomo. And when we were talking about Governor Cuomo's policies, I'd like to point out that for all that people are talking about this nursing home scandal, which it is,
right.
Governor Cuomo had a similar order in place for the group or aggregate homes for the developmentally disabled. He put that in place in April, saying that people who are going to be admitted there were not allowed to be tested for COVID, and that they had to receive COVID positive individuals. That is still in place, and to date, it's resulted in over 7,000 COVID infections and nearly 600 deaths of the developmentally disabled. And this is just a huge story. And the fact that Cuomo hasn't pulled the plug on this policy speaks volumes as to whether he finds this to be serious or not.
I like what you did there, Amir. That was a very good pivot. I have to be honest, I did not watch I had to play along with Rachel because she was into it yesterday. The interview was on. It was almost 10 o'clock at night Sunday night. I was asleep. I didn't watch the foolish interview. There is an appetite for the royal family. I will tell you, it's also really un-American. I mean, we're not there's no royalty here in the U.S. I mean, maybe.
We're fascinated by this.
We're so fascinated, but we left Great Britain,
for that reason.
No taxation, without representation. That's why we left, and we watch it play out. We don't have make pretend and little castles, and it's you watch this stuff and you're like, people are dying from a global pandemic, and you're watching these two people who are totally out to lunch with Oprah, who lives like 2 doors down from their $15 million house, and I finally saw some of it, not all of it.
Neighbors, they got paid $7 million for her to complain about being a working actress, which a lot of women in LA would love to be.
Right.
Who became a princess, essentially.
Right. Andrew, I'm sitting there watching I'm watching them feed chickens, and Meghan Markle's talking about how normal of a person she is feeding chickens. Your thoughts? Did you watch it?
I did. I have to admit I did. I've never been into the royals. It's just never really gotten my interest or attention.
Right.
I watched it. I said I'm going to watch a segment. I did end up watching 2 hours. I promised my wife one more segment and I'm done.
Right.
The most entertaining thing I thought was actually watching Greg Kelly's live play-by-play of the tweets. And there were so many times where I turned to my wife and I said, you see, Greg is thinking it too.
Right.
Greg is thinking it too. So that to me was far more entertaining than hearing anything that came out of Meghan or Harry or even Oprah's mouth. I mean, what a poor job of interviewing, I thought, by Oprah. How about just going back to, how about we Psaki back to the idea that the House staffers, geez, I keep saying the House staffers, the royal staffers that were fired because of Meghan.
Castle staffers.
The castle staffers, exactly. You could see, I wanted to make sure that I got a few mistakes on here so you know that I'm not a royal groupie here.
Right.
But I'd love to know, who got fired? And why did they get fired? Something. Oprah just did a poor job, I thought, of interviewing.
All right, Emerald, go ahead.
We are talking about it. I think we should point out one thing is he keeps saying it was rape.
See, now everybody wants to talk about this. All right, Betsy, let's start. Let's go to you, then Emerald, you, and then we're going to move on to some other stuff.
I've raised a really important issue, and I hope we can get to it before the segment is over, which is the other misdeeds or terrible mistakes made by the health department in New York State. It's not just Cuomo who's on the line here. It should be Howard Zucker, the health commissioner. And the fact is, a lot of those people are going to start talking big time to save their own necks when this starts to come out more.
There is no question about that, Betsy. I'm going to reset here. This is Andrew Cuomo, by the way, speaking yesterday. Out of all places, one of the 2 locations, that he could have sent any of these 15,000 nursing home patients that lost their lives that didn't have to. One was the Comfort Ship parked right in Manhattan, and one was the Javits Center. He was speaking at the Javits Center a day ago, talking about how well New York is doing with vaccinating New Yorkers. Take a listen.
This weekend, the Javits Center did more vaccinations than any place in the United States of America. That's what we're doing here at Javits.
All right, Emerald, go ahead. This is the same place, by the way, where Hillary Clinton was going to shatter the glass ceiling back in 2016. That didn't happen. I thought maybe Cuomo will announce that he's not going to run in 2022. That didn't happen either.
We know better than that. I think, was it Ben Weingarten in the last hour said that he's the narcissist of all narcissists, and it tends to be a quality in a lot of politicians, and he exemplifies it more than most. So that wasn't surprising. But I think Betsy said something very interesting in that once the pressure is really put on, we might see some of these other players sing in order to save themselves. So that's something to watch out for. I just wonder, when do you think that's actually going to happen, Betsy?
Well, it will happen as the investigation continues. The pressure is really building because Cuomo didn't do it by himself. He did a lot of this obfuscation and outright lying with the assistance of people in the executive branch, in the executive chamber, I should say, and that chamber is being represented by Elkin Abramowitz, a criminal attorney, but also by the health department. And it's amazing to me that Howard Zucker is still in his chair.
Andrew, let me ask you, you spent a lot of time in New York politics. Of course, your dad famously led New York City through 9/11. What's your feeling on this now? More than 50, by the way, the majority are Democrats, have called for his resignation, 50 New York lawmakers. And the threshold is 76. Do you think there's a chance that at some point here he is forced to resign?
I don't think he's going to resign. I just, as the other panelists mentioned this morning, I don't see him actually stepping down. I do think that we're going to actually start seeing potentially impeachment hearings here coming forward. I'm sure the lieutenant governor understands the process better than I do here. But from my understanding, it'll take the assembly. It takes a simple majority of the assembly in order to impeach Governor Cuomo. Once he's impeached, though, and this is the difference between the gubernatorialship of New York and the presidency, immediately, and if I'm not mistaken, Betsy, please chime in, but if I'm not mistaken, immediately the lieutenant governor actually has power at that moment. Is that correct?
That's right. She becomes the temporary governor.
Right.
The other thing that's really interesting is that it's harder to convict and remove in New York State than most places. It requires 2/3 of the Senate plus the top judges in the state, most of whom have been appointed by Cuomo.
By Cuomo, because he's been around for so long in his third term.
Sounds like he could call in a lot of favors on this, though.
He's been trying to, Emerald. He's been on the phone with lawmakers, I guess, trying to strong arm them into taking his side. By the way, Betsy, we're totally out of time. But you remember the former Attorney General of New York, Eric Schneiderman? Cuomo told him to leave office a couple years ago for similar accusations, and now it's pot calling the kettle black. Cuomo's not going anywhere.
Time for New Yorkers to elect a Republican governor.
It could happen. It could happen. Panel, I really enjoyed it. Andrew Giuliani, welcome to Wake Up America. Hope to see you again. As always, guys, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri announcing that he will not run for re-election in 2022, a surprise decision amid a slew of retirements from top Senate Republicans. Blunt, who was first elected to the Senate in 2010 and previously served for 14 years in the House, is the 5th Republican in this cycle to announce his retirement. Well, police in St. Louis are investigating a shooting that killed a 9-year-old boy while he was sitting in the back of his mother's car. A 7-month-old boy also in that vehicle, along with a 31-year-old man and a 34-year-old mother. No one else injured, but this is the 7th child to be shot and killed in the city of St. Louis in 2021 alone. A judge has ruled that charges against Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, for a shooting a Louisville police officer would be permanently dropped. The judge declared that the charges against Walker would be dismissed with prejudice preventing him from being charged with the March 13th incident that resulted in his girlfriend's death. Those are just some of the headlines we're following for you, but if you're looking for more breaking news, you can head to newsmax.com. You can also stick with us right here for another hour of Wake Up America starting right now.
Morning, and thank you so much for joining us here on Wake Up America. It's Tuesday, March the 9th. I'm Rob Finnerty.
And I'm Rachel Rollar. Happy Tuesday. Let's take a look at some of those other stories we're following for you this morning. The House is set to vote on the COVID-19 relief bill this week while President Biden faces a challenge at the U.S.-Mexico border. Plus, a glimpse of hope. The CDC easing restrictions for those vaccinated, allowing small gatherings indoors, but must wear a mask and social distance in public. And royal silence. The world's still buzzing over Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's explosive interview, while Buckingham Palace has yet to respond. However, Rob, we're learning this morning the Queen denied to sign a statement last night, so we might actually get a response after all.
And Piers Morgan apparently walking off the set during an interview early this morning. They're about 5 hours ahead of us there in London. More on that as well. All right, Rachel, thank you. The House now appears to be on track for a final vote on President Biden's massive $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. The bill will also include $1,400 stimulus checks for many Americans and a $300 bonus for federal unemployment benefits. But the bill has not gotten any Republican support, and there are many, many good reasons why that is. Joining us now to talk about this bill is South Dakota Congressman Dusty Johnson. Congressman, welcome back to the show. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
The bill being called the American Rescue Plan really doesn't rescue any Americans, but it does remain hugely popular with most Americans making under $75,000 a year because they will, of course, get these $1,400 checks. But do you think that's the only reason that Americans seem to be overwhelmingly in support of this bill? And do you expect any different vote tallies once this thing is finally voted on again in the House today or tomorrow?
Well, it's always going to be popular just giving away money, but
Right.
The American taxpayer is not getting a good deal on this thing, Rob. I mean, we're taking $5,600 per American. Some people will get $1,400 back. Frankly, a lot of this money is wasted. It is a damn shame. The first 5 COVID relief packages were strongly bipartisan. This thing is just a Democratic wish list. And it spends a lot of money on things that do not deserve the investment. As far as your question about whether or not I think there'll be any vote tally changes, no. I think this is going to be a party line vote. We will probably get a couple of Democrats to vote with us because even they have to acknowledge this thing is a stinker.
It's interesting. When the first stimulus bill came down the pike a year ago in March 2020, the final count in the Senate was 96-0. That's how bipartisan the bill was. That's how much the bill made sense for the American people. This bill, completely partisan. It also is going to pay people like Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, Bernie Madoff, who robbed thousands of people of millions of dollars. He's going to get a $1,400 check because of the Democrats.
This is what blind partisanship gets us. I mean, Republicans have offered a number of amendments throughout this process in regular order. I mean, in the committee level, not just show amendments, things that really would improve the bill. Those amendments were rejected and rejected and rejected. Republicans wanted to deny convicted felons those checks, but the Democrats would not go along.
Joe Biden has been a very busy man, even though we don't see much of him, certainly not in the press room. He's yet to hold a briefing. H.R. 1 did pass last week in the House. It is a clear goal of trying to federalize elections starting in 2022. Were you surprised that there wasn't, more coverage of H.R. 1, particularly with some of the other networks and maybe some of the left-leaning newspapers? You didn't hear anything about it other than it passed.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, frankly, there are a lot of folks on my side of the aisle, the Republicans, who, we can get plenty of outrage by Dr. Seuss. And I admit there's lots ridiculous about the Dr. Seuss storyline.
Right.
But we cannot take our eyes off the real issues that are taking place before our very eyes, which is that Joe Biden, who seems like a perfectly nice guy, is not governing as a moderate. He is not governing with, searching for unity. I mean, he is perfectly happy to push H.R. 1, which would federalize elections. Yeah. And, oh, by the way, would take hard-earned dollars from the federal treasury and give them to politicians so that they could pay for their TV ads, not at a one-to-one match, but at a 6-to-1 match. I think if people really understood all of the terribleness within the COVID package, within H.R. 1, within all of these other bills, they would be outraged.
It's really scary. Since you brought up Dr. Seuss, by the way, you know you can buy Mein Kampf right now on eBay, but you can't buy 6 Dr. Seuss books. It's a slap in the face to so many people. Yesterday, Pepe Le Pew was apparently canceled, along with Speedy Gonzalez. A week ago, it was the Muppets. How disturbing is it that we live in America where this is becoming normalized? I mean, next week it's going to be Elmo, Mickey Mouse, and we're just going to keep going.
Well, I think the concerning fact isn't where we're at now. I mean, listen, I like Pepe Le Pew. Yeah, it's certainly not the end of the world if he gets canceled. I wish he hadn't been. What's more scary than any of that, though, is that we're not stopping. It's not like, oh, they've conquered this hill and now we're done with the political correctness. They are going to keep pushing and they're going to keep driving. And you're right. Who knows what's next? To me, it is just ridiculous. I mean, Americans are hardy, tough folk. I don't care what color you are. I don't care how old you are. You come from tough stock. We should be able to handle a little bit of levity, a little bit of Speedy Gonzalez now and then.
Yeah. I know you're a married man. When I was courting my wife, you know, I'm an old-fashioned guy. Chivalry still exists in my book. I didn't look to a cartoon skunk for tips and pointers on how to try to win my wife over. I just think it's ridiculous. Andrew Cuomo, and you're a congressman from South Dakota, but I've got to ask you about Andrew Cuomo. It's one of these stories that comes along every now and again where it's all consuming. I don't want to ask you about whether or not you think he should step down. I'm more curious, do you think that the Democrats, who will turn on their own in an instant, and they've done so here with Andrew Cuomo and they've done so with Gavin Newsom in California, do you think this is more an effort to clear the runway for Kamala Harris in 2024?
Politics is messy business, and anytime anybody missteps, you have to assume that their political adversaries, ambitious politicians, are going to do what they can to cut the legs out from underneath them. I'm sure there is plenty of that going on. I also don't have any doubt that there is some legitimate, righteous indignation on the left. There certainly is on the right. You cannot lie to people about COVID deaths while maintaining that you are some sort of exemplar of COVID perfectness. I mean, it is hypocrisy and it's lying. It's politics at its worst.
Congressman, about 10 seconds. I know that you wrote President Biden a letter asking where all the money went for that previous COVID-19 bill. Did you ever get a response?
Of course not. They don't want that information out.
Yeah. All right. That is Congressman Dusty Johnson joining us again here on Wake Up America. Always a pleasure, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks, Rob.
China is finally facing criticism from around the world over their treatment of the Uyghur Muslims and many other minorities. Experts say that between 1 and 3 million Uyghurs are being detained right now in internment camps, which the Chinese government calls re-education centers. Joining us now to talk more about the atrocities currently happening in China is a man who was forced to work in one of these camps for more than 2 years. Tahir Emin is joining us. Tahir, thanks so much for being with us on Wake Up America. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure. I want to get right to it. The Uyghur Muslims, they're a Muslim minority group, largely from the northwestern part of China. They're now being detained, and when I say detained, I mean completely without cause. If you've got a long beard, you can be arrested and sent to one of these internment camps. Tell us, why were you initially sent to one of these camps?
It was in 2005. I have written an article titled Uyghur Culture in Danger, explains why the Chinese Communist Party wanted to eradicate Uyghur culture. And the Chinese authority put me in jail for more than 2 years. And we had to work 14 hours a day and forced to learn the political indoctrination for 2 hours a day. That was most humiliating and horrible experience of my lifetime, which is very different from the concentration camps.
Yeah, I want to touch on that point. I've heard you say that before. You've called the treatment of the Uyghurs there the worst human atrocities since World War II, which is a very, very strong statement, and that will certainly grab people's attention. But you say this because there is murder, there is forced genocide. What were the conditions like for you, and what are the conditions like now?
Before I said time, it is even if it is the extra judicial, extra trial, legal trial process just executed by the Chinese police authorities, but it's now the Chinese state crackdown and the genocidal policy, not only eradicate the ethnic and religious and cultural identity, but also the physically and biologically wipe out the entire population. So far, we have witnesses reports verified by independent news media organizations. Also, the witnesses say that there are the mass detention, and the people are being tortured, and the women are being faced to rape and forced sterilization and forceful abortions, even the organ harvesting. So I think I believe this is much more worse than what I have experienced almost 15 years ago.
So the point you're making is well heard. The situation at these internment camps has gotten worse. Forced breeding to try and get rid of the Uyghur Muslim populations in that part of China is also taking place. Why do you think the international community has done so little about this, including the United States?
Yes, it's genocide according to UN Convention on Genocide. When it comes to genocide, the lip service, criticism, or statement from the governments is not enough. The genocide is the most radical and extreme the actions by a government against a minority or a people. So in order to counter this kind of extreme radical campaign by government, you have to be stronger. Yeah. You have to produce out the more consistent, more stronger actions allied by the freedom-loving countries. So I think, yeah.
Go ahead. I just want to get to a couple more points because we have limited time. But this broke my heart as a father myself. I know that you haven't talked to your daughter in at least a couple years now. But the last time you talked to her, I think she was around 7 years old, and she said that she had been brainwashed, and she said that you were a bad person. Tell us about that.
Yes. After I came to the United States, my wife was a professor of college. She was forced to divorce me, and my daughter told me that I'm a bad person, and the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese police are the good people who are take care of the Uyghur people. So she asked me not to call them again and not to contact with them again. So that was a word, the last word from my loved daughter. Yes.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And I just, for our Newsmax viewers, the Biden administration, Joe Biden himself called the mistreatment of the Uyghurs, quote, a different norm. So he's still failing to acknowledge the severity of what's going on there. Finally, in just a few seconds, should we be boycotting the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics?
Absolutely. It should be boycott. The Olympics shouldn't be allowed to have the genocide Olympics after the Jewish Holocaust. And also all of the Chinese products should be boycotted by not only by Americans, but also around the world. Also, I call the Hollywood stars and NBA players and Wall Street investors and all of the elites to stand up for Uyghurs and call it genocide and take stronger actions for us.
I wish people like LeBron James would call and acknowledge that genocide. They are wearing jerseys that in some cases were made by Uyghur Muslims in the NBA, and that's something that nobody here in the U.S. wants to talk about because the NBA is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Tahir, Emin, thank you so much for your time, your bravery, and for telling part of your story. We appreciate it. Come back and see us.
Thank you very much.
All right, still a lot more to come here on Wake Up America. We'll be right back.
It's time now for your question of the day as we continue to showcase Women's History Month. What significant event happened on this day in 1990 that was historical in two ways? Well, Antonia Novello became the first female and first Hispanic Surgeon General in the United States. Appointed by President H.W. Bush, Novello, a Puerto Rican physician and public health administrator, focused on improving anti-smoking and educating people on the AIDS epidemic. After her role as Surgeon General, Novello was assigned to the United Nations Children's Fund and remained especially critical of the tobacco industry for appealing to the youth market.
Yeah, she kept Nancy Reagan just say no. That was a big one, too, that was going on at that time. 1990 seems like so long ago now.
It does.
And it wasn't
that
long
Yeah,
ago.
I know.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Let's get you some headlines on this Tuesday morning. Protesters are calling for justice in Turkey. 1,000 women gathered in Istanbul protesting a lack of action to prevent violence against women. So far in 2021, 51 women there have been murdered. Turkey's president has already announced plans to establish a commission to address issues regarding violence against women. The Kansas Jayhawks are now looking for a new head football coach, not a new head basketball coach. Former national championship winning coach Les Miles and the university mutually parted ways yesterday amid allegations of sexual misconduct during his time down at LSU. Miles called it a difficult day, but has denied claims that he made any sexual advances toward female students. And take a look at this. Tough video to watch, but we're showing it to you for a reason. Here it is. This is a train going down the tracks, and it hits a bus right there. Yeah, this happened in Sweden at a railway crossing. 50 people were on board that train, but we show you the video in its true form because nobody, miraculously, was injured. The bus driver apparently got off the bus, and the train kept barreling down the tracks. It takes a while for those things to stop. If you've ever seen the movie The Fugitive, that reminds me of one of the scenes there. That's exactly what it looks like. Provasic, yeah.
Crazy that no one was injured. Protesters taking to the streets of Minneapolis yesterday as jury selection in the case of Derek Chauvin was delayed over clarity of the third-degree murder charge. Now, Chauvin is facing second-degree murder and manslaughter charges in the death of George Floyd. The judge says the jury selection will resume today. So here to talk about it all and much more, the defense attorney who was part of the O.J. Simpson Dream Team, also representing Michael Jackson, among many others, is Mark Garrigus. We thank you so much for coming back to Wake Up America, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, more than a dozen potential jurors were chosen by the defense and prosecution, but then the judge delayed that selection. Is this common for a case like this? I imagine it's going to be difficult to get unbiased jurors with this type of case.
It's extremely difficult to get unbiased jurors in this type of case, but complicating matters is the fact that you have the Court of Appeal ordering the trial judge to reconsider the third-degree murder charge. You also have potentially the Minnesota Supreme Court getting involved. And ironically, I suppose in some ways, it's the prosecution who's asking for a delay and the defense who's saying, no, we're going to go to the Supreme Court anyway. And we want to continue to pick a jury if we can. Part of the reason for that may be that the judge, under the law, if it turns out that as he's selecting the jury, he decides that he cannot, because of where the location is, what's commonly called venue, if he decides I can't get a fair jury here, he's got the right to renew his consideration of changing venue, which may happen in this case, although he's given the indication, where could I send it, because the publicity has been so overwhelming everywhere.
Of course, this story dominated headlines over the summer for months. And where could you take this? But maybe in the heart of Minneapolis, it is too close to home. We've seen protests there this week. They have all been remaining peaceful. But how does that play a factor in the courtroom as well?
Well, I think, look, from the defense standpoint, the defense is going to argue, and they have argued, you can't have a fair trial in this kind of what they would claim is a circus-like atmosphere, supercharged atmosphere. And you certainly cannot have jurors feel like they're going to do the right thing according to what is in the evidence in a courtroom if there's people who are putting pressure on them one way or another. I'm not saying that there is one right outcome. The outcome should be determined by the evidence in the courtroom. And if there's people or an agenda or a cause that is telling you that you've got to vote one way or another, then you're not doing justice.
And we've seen the temperature raise so much over this story throughout the past year. I imagine those jurors would be terrified for their answers to be released to the public once this is all over. Of course, also, now you've been in the courtroom during major cases like O.J. Simpson, like we said, you represented Michael Jackson. Now, with this case in particular, times have changed a bit since both of those. And we know that legal experts are saying bystander video is going to be critical in this case. Do you think that's something that's just evolved now with how everyone has their cell phone out at all times?
I think that is a real important consideration that has kind of developed over the last couple of years. I will tell you, one of the things that I've worried about, and I've had it in several high-profile cases is you worry about jurors, what I call stealth jurors, jurors who basically will tell the judge and the participants whatever they want to hear because they have their own agenda. And usually that agenda is they want to write a book afterwards and basically get a payday. That is a real concern. If you're a participant in this case, you want jurors who are not looking to sell the best book and deliver the verdict that will get them the best book deal. So that always is a concern to me. And if you have any jurors who are telling you they haven't heard of the case or they haven't formed an opinion, to my mind, that would be they're lying through their teeth, because there's nobody who doesn't have an opinion who hasn't heard about the case.
That's interesting about the books. Not something I thought of. Of course, you're very more well aware of these situations. And like you said, someone who says, no, I haven't. You need someone who says, I have. I'm able to make an unbiased decision with the evidence that will be presented. We have about 30 seconds left. What would you say to Derek Chauvin if you were his attorney? How would you advise him?
Well, what I would normally, and what I always tell a client is, I say, look, don't necessarily get rid of, or we don't want to necessarily get rid of somebody who says they've heard of the case, they've got an opinion, especially if they say, I think he's guilty. If you start questioning a little bit and they're willing to set that aside and they're willing to say, okay, I'll listen to the evidence, and you think you're telling the truth, that potential juror may be more honest than somebody who says, I've never heard about this case, I've got no opinion, and yes, I want to serve because it's my duty. I generally tend to look askance at somebody who tells me those things because it just doesn't seem to fit with human nature.
Just doesn't add up. Such interesting insight. Mark Garrigus, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we have a lot coming up on Wake Up America. Congressman Devin Nunes is going to join us to talk about COVID relief, school shutdowns, the border crisis, much more. You're watching Wake Up America. Stick with us.
It is so embarrassing.
If you've had it with the old news
And the same spent
well, then Spicer & Company's your place.
for the inside story.
And for the facts that you need to know.
Meaningful Beauty's age-defying formulas are what's kept supermodel Cindy Crawford looking so youthful for so long. Look at Cindy at age 31 and at age 52.
If you want to start looking younger right now, you need Meaningful Beauty Supreme.
Meaningful Beauty was created by Dr. Jean-Louis Sabat.
I first met him when I was 28 years old, and he did this melon-based antioxidant vitamin treatment. It was like my skin was just glowing.
His age-fighting secret comes from a genetically unique melon found only in the south of France.
This melon really is quite genetically unique. It contains high concentrations of a very powerful antioxidant, SOD. It's known as the youth molecule.
Just watch as an ordinary melon wrinkles, ages, and decays, while this remarkable melon on the right, containing the youth molecule, stays fresh and firm.
It's like we are bringing you the quintessential vitality of the melon. All its anti-aging power and magic right to your skin.
Watch as your frown lines are visibly diminished, wrinkles are visibly softened, necklines appear dramatically reduced.
You want Dr. Sabag's melon. You want something that's going to keep you looking youthful and fresh and healthy.
Now you can experience the magic of the Meaningful Beauty Supreme System's concentrated super treatments, including Dr. Sabag's astonishing youth-activating melon serum.
I saw Meaningful Beauty on TV and wondered, could it really be all that? Well, let me tell you, these creams and serums are amazing.
Meaningful Beauty's price of $139 is already an incredible bargain. Order now and you'll pay just $49.95.
Plus, be one of the first 500 orders and receive Cindy's new Glow and Go Trio free.
Call 1-800-892-6442 or go online to meaningfulbeauty.com right now.
Hello there, Michael Youssef here. Have you ever experienced the pain of betrayal? You know, when someone that you trusted has lied to you, abandoned you, or spread gossip about you, your whole world turns to ashes. Now, you may feel you can never trust anyone again, but Jesus knows the pain of betrayal, and he knows how you feel. He was betrayed and abandoned by all of his friends, and yet, when they repented, he forgave them. This same Jesus is ready to forgive all your sins when you turn to him. He is the friend that you can trust always. Will you come to him? Come to Jesus right now and place your whole trust in him.
When you come to Jesus, you'll find a God who can walk with you through the hard times that life can throw at you. Visit findingtruepeace.com to learn about the one who will never turn his back on you. That's findingtruepeace.com.
I don't want to look like this anymore.
What is happening to my body?
Why can't I lose weight?
You may be suffering from insulin resistance. Measure your waist. Females measuring more than 35 inches and males measuring more than 40 inches may have insulin resistance. To learn how to reverse insulin resistance and lose weight effectively, go online to golo.com. Once again, that's golo.com.
Fresh and Lean has a question for you. What if you could taste a bit of that success you're working so hard for right now? What if you had your own personal farmer, a personal chef? Oh, careful there, buddy. Personal delivery driver. Hey, Andy. The meals you want each week, guaranteed. Like literally, all of these. That is some tasty success right there. Order organic, farm-to-table, chef-cooked meals. Delivered to your door, ready to eat. Fresh and Lean. Feed your potential.
Welcome back into Wake Up America. I'm Rob Finnerty. Lawmakers are ready to vote on the Biden administration's $1.9 trillion debacle of a COVID-19 relief bill, even though it does very little to address COVID relief. Joining us now to talk more about that is California Congressman Devin Nunes. Congressman, good morning. Welcome into the show.
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Nice to have you on, sir. I'm wondering if you expect any changes in the final vote count for this bill, or do you expect it to pass again in a tight vote like it did a couple weeks ago?
Well, I think you have to remember, first and foremost, this is a $2 trillion slush fund. We saw the Democrats do this play call back in 2009. So the Obama team knows exactly what they're doing. And I say Obama team because that's, I think, who's running the White House today.
Right.
So what they'll start to do now is there's probably 10 to 20 Democrat holdouts right now. So they will go in now. There's meetings going on. There's phone calls. There's threats. They're dangling money, carrots and sticks. And ultimately they will get the vote. So only the bravest ones will actually hold out to the very end. Those will likely be punished. Some of those will take it to the very end and try to cut a fat deal to get some boondoggle project for their district or additional money for their district. That's what's happening right now. This is unprecedented to spend $2 trillion with not one Republican vote in the House and not one Republican vote in the Senate.
Yeah, and I'm tired of hearing that Americans are excited about this. Americans are excited about getting $1,400 checks if they make less than $75,000 a year. And that's the only reason. But I promise you that the majority of Americans have no idea some of the ridiculousness that is the spending, that is the egregious spending that's in this bill. I wanted to talk to you about the recall effort of Gavin Newsom in the state of California right now. They reportedly have over 2 million signatures. That's an unbelievable number. Do you think there's a chance that Newsom is actually forced to step down or that he's thrown out of office? And then do you think there is a one Republican that other Republicans can get behind in the state of California?
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand how the process works for your viewers. So first, there will be, once the signatures are counted and verified, and my guess is that's going to be delayed because we have one-party Socialist Democrat rule in California. So they will use every lever of power to delay this as long as possible. Newsom's now on a tour of the state like he never has been before. I think he's been through my part of the Central Valley, virtually every week the last few weeks. We hadn't seen him in basically a year.
Right.
So he's on a publicity tour. So they're going to try to take this as long as possible, hope that things get opened up. They're now rewarding schools to get back into school. So he's essentially trying to distance himself enough from the French Laundry incident that, most politicians, that would be a killer, at least Republicans or conservatives, be a killer move. So what will happen is this vote will probably be in November, December, is ultimately what's going to happen. There'll be two votes. The first vote will be a yes or no question. Do you want to recall Newsom? If yes, he's gone and he exits stage left. The second question will be, who do you want to replace him? And the key will be for Republicans to have one good candidate. You asked me who are the candidates, the top-notch candidates we have. right now I would say we have two. One is the mayor of San Diego, Kevin Faulconer. The other is the former head of the Director of National Intelligence, Ambassador to Germany, Rick Grenell. One of those guys will have to get out of the race at some point. I think it's fine right now. They're positioning themselves. And then the Democrats, the key to watch here, Rob, will be, will a Democrat, prominent Democrat, or more than one, actually get on the ballot? Because remember, Newsom is either in or out. That's it.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating. By the way, Rick Grenell claims that Susan Rice is actually the current president right now in the White House. Fascinating comments he made on Newsmax not long ago. I wanted to ask you about the Socialist Democratic Party, since you mentioned this. So Gavin Newsom, we've got in California, we've got Andrew Cuomo in New York. I don't think this is a coincidence. It seems to me like Democrats, who we know will eat their young, are clearing the runway for Kamala Harris in 2024. Think that's accurate?
Yeah, I do. I think that's exactly what's happening. Newsom's maybe a little bit of a different situation. He's kind of stepped in a lot of things on his own, but for sure, I think they're taking advantage of this to get him out of the way. But Cuomo, I think this is. I mean, look, this is not. None of the issues surrounding Cuomo have been a secret. People are acting like, oh my gosh, there was a problem with nursing homes. Well, right. If you watch, any type of honest news media for the last year, we knew that, and a lot of us had talked about that. Many of the New Yorkers, the members of Congress from New York, were talking about this for a year, that this was happening. So that's not news, but now all of a sudden they're acting like it's news. I also highly doubt that all these women that are coming forward, that people didn't know, people in the media, people in Democratic circles didn't know that this guy, had an issue dealing with women, right? And look, he's innocent till proven guilty. But there's a lot of women that are out there, right? So looks like an issue. So Kamala Harris, she's not popular. She wasn't even able to finish a primary. She had to drop out of the primary because she was going to get last. I jokingly say she was running 10th in the primary, and that was only because there were 10 people in the primary.
Right.
So she had to get out. Newsom, I think this is a good opportunity for her to get Newsom off the stage. Because she's trying to figure out a way to have a clear field so that essentially, like the Politburo system works, there would be no competition for her, and then she's just anointed. And my guess is, as long as the tech oligarchs are there and they're censoring us, they're going to run the campaign just like they did last time, which is they'll just hide out and they'll poison people, put poison on their phones, and hope that they can survive this. And nobody will learn that Newsom wasn't wearing a mask. Nobody will learn that Fauci is, in direct opposite to what the CDC is saying today.
Yeah, literally.
Or said yesterday.
I am so tired of Dr. Anthony Fauci, and I think you make a good point. If it was, say, Ron DeSantis, who's one of the heroes, at least the hero governors of this whole disaster, that is COVID-19, I think had he been eating at French Laundry or Nobu, where you pick your restaurant, this would be, front page of the New York Times every day for a week. But because it's Gavin Newsom, nobody wants to talk about it.
Exactly. Right until they'd have to try to drive his numbers down as much as possible. That's all I've heard for the last year, Rob, is just any Republican state, any red state that was open. Remember, it was all about super spreaders, right? That was the big deal, super spreaders. Well, look, the facts are very clear. The states that had the hardest lockdowns and had multiple mask mandates and kept the schools closed
have been hit the hardest.
In many cases, they've lost the most people.
Yeah. Congressman, we appreciate the time. Come back and see us. Great having you on. That is Congressman Devin Nunes of the 22nd District of California. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, Emma Reckenberg here. If you like this video, there's a whole lot more to see on Newsmax TV. You can watch for free right here on our YouTube live stream and be the first one here each time our experts break down real news. Just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon, and stay with us on America's fastest growing cable news channel, Newsmax TV.